Hello, I'd like to welcome you all to the July 4th recording of Gardening Tips Live on the Knoxville Area Gardening Tips Facebook group. Hi, everybody. This is Amy Hahn, and I'm joined by
Brian Townsend
and Toby Johnson.
And we're here with Gardening Tips Live today. And let me get our nice little title screen going. There we go. So everyone can sort of know that this is what we're doing right now. And as we're just getting started this morning, I'm gonna go and pin this to the top of our page so that everyone can find us here, and would like to wish everyone a happy 4th of July. 2020, a little bit stranger than most years.
Oh boy. I thought we were supposed to be keeping our message encouraging.
We are.
Encouraging.
We stayed up last night and watched Hamilton in the middle of the night. So there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
It's fantastic. Highly recommended.
So the Gardening Tips Live is now pinned to the top, so we can really get started here so that everyone can find us who wants to find us. I figure some people figure we're not going to be here today, but what is it? We're not going anywhere right now.
Right.
So
I have not sent Rylan an email, but with this when the city voting somewhat mandatory wearing mask on there, I wonder if that's throwing our farmers markets even further back.
Well, I know that we will definitely not be at Market Square because they're limiting entry and they're not doing any nonprofits. But we'll have to see what happens with the rest of the potential to go back to the farmers markets.
Now, I am doing unofficially Tellico Village.
Right, you're helping the market there as a private individual. Okay, so let's talk about the Gardening Tips Live stuff because people are watching us. Okay, so I thought I'd show you a few things. Last week we talked a little bit about trellising and using cattle panels for trellising.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is not an original idea, but I actually saw it on a YouTube channel called Roots and Refuge, and she does a lot of really interesting stuff. So I had the opportunity to buy some used cattle panels this year. And so this is one with squash on it. And if you look in the background, that's supposed to be a half runner bean that I just had a square of. I thought half runner meant short, but it's all the way to the top of the trellis.
So gang, those trellises are the cattle panels, probably what, Amy, 3 feet? 3 feet
They're
tall?
4 feet wide, and I think it's 16 feet long.
No, not 6. Oh, 16 feet. Oh, I have short
16 feet long, because when you loop them over, they're like 7 feet tall.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're still tall. And I actually have 3 foot T-posts. That's what they're attached to.
T-posts? Oh, for
T-posts, fence posts.
The metal fence posts. So where do you pick where'd you find the materials for this, Amy? The construction materials?
Well, I know Tractor Supply sells cattle panels.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Like your co-ops.
I'm not sure if Home Depot, but the co-ops and anyone who does supplies for people with cattle will have them.
Farm and Ranch.
Yeah. And so what I did with these ones is I actually cut this one. So it's about a 1.5 feet, and then this one's maybe 2.5 feet. So I cut it into 2 pieces.
Got it.
So that I could do two trellises. And these are Asian long beans, and you can see them hanging down there. And so that's going to be really nice when it's filled in. And I've got a cucumber planted on this side, and I've got purple hyacinth bean. Oh, and there's some wild lettuce that's, I guess you could call it a weed. I haven't pulled it yet. And then you can see my tarping material, my path material. If you look close to the end of the photo, you can see a lot of broadleaf plantain. That used to be what was in that whole path, a mixture of that and grasses, and it would get really slick. And so this is actually working out as a better solution, and it lets the water through. Okay, there's some ladybugs trying to make more ladybugs, working on that effort. And so this is a milkweed pod. And over on this other plant, I think you can see it a little bit in the background. You can see a milkweed pod that's covered with aphids. I'm pretty sure that's what that is with the little yellow specks on it. So they're going to have plenty of food for their next generation. Just right handy there. This is an experiment this year. This is called an Armenian cucumber. And after I stop sharing the photos, I'll show you the actual real thing. I picked this one and this one here. And they taste like cucumber, but they have a soft fuzz on them. And they're not supposed to be susceptible to some of the diseases we have here. I'll report back a little more. I've got 2 different varieties planted. And so this is called painted serpent. And I've heard if you actually let them mature, they get about 3 foot long. But
Wow.
I only have 1 plant of that, so I'm not planning on doing that. Because if I let it mature, then the plant would be like, yippee, I've made seed. I don't have to do anything more. Okay, there's some of those half runner beans. They're doing really nicely and getting ready to pick. When they do stuff like that, when it's a short one, it probably wasn't completely pollinated for some reason. And you get short beans. That's also what causes misshapen cucumbers and tomatoes sometimes.
Yeah, I've had a few yellow squashes this year that get to about 2-3 inches long and then they kind of wither.
Yeah, and if they totally wither, it's probably incomplete pollination. A lot of times with cucumbers, you'll end up with just a weird shape. Or
now what happens? Okay, how early can you identify this problem and say, okay, we have incomplete pollination? What can you do about that? Anything?
With squashes, you can hand pollinate.
Okay.
And which is pretty easy. We've talked about the male and female flowers on those before. I remember, and helping them out a bit. With tomatoes, if you're seeing what looks like incomplete pollination or fruit not setting, what I'll go through is like once a day, I'll go through and shake the plants a little bit. And that'll help the pollen move. Tomatoes have male and female parts in each flower.
Right.
And so they can pollinate themselves. Same with beans. Beans, you generally don't have to do anything. It's just occasionally you'll end up with an odd shaped one.
Now,
one thing about tomatoes is, well, let's look at some tomatoes, is when the temperatures are in the 90s or above, it delays the ripening of tomatoes. It can also cause blossom drop, where the blossoms don't get fertilized. For each tomato variety, and it does seem to be different between different varieties, there's a temperature at which the pollen dies. And so they can't set fruit. And so if we're running really hot temperatures, you're going to have blossoms drop. And then if you have a couple cool days, it'll set fruit those cooler days. What I understand is in some parts of the country, in some parts of the world, they'll actually put a light shade cloth over their tomatoes or cheesecloth, something to shelter them a little bit.
Does that make a difference on the temperature though?
Right. That's what the idea is to just moderate the temperature a little bit, because it's, around here, we usually don't have very many days over 90. Some years we do. in those years that we have a lot of days in a row over 90, as a tomato grower, you'll see a gap in production. And then as the season goes on and the temperatures cool a little bit, you'll have another round of fruit production. And so there might be a couple weeks or a month that you don't have tomatoes setting fruit, depending on the temperature. I haven't tried the thing about putting a shade cloth or a little bit of floating row cover or something to give them a little shelter.
Now we're talking about determinate tomatoes, right?
No,
Or-
we're talking
or-
about indeterminate, ones
Okay.
that keep growing and keep producing.
Okay.
So they'll have a gap during that time when their pollen is getting killed, where they don't set fruit.
Okay.
And then as it cools down, they'll be able to set fruit again. So if you see that happen, you could try putting a layer of floating row cover just lightly on top of your plants to give them a little bit of shade and hopefully moderate that temperature. If you're seeing that problem and we're having temperatures 90 or above, it's worth a try because you're not likely to hurt anything.
During these hot days that we're having, and you're talking about, is it beneficial to pinch off blooms to keep it from setting when we know that we're going to have problems with it? And then as the temperatures moderate, then we can just let things go again. Does that help?
I've never done that because when they don't set, they just fall off.
Right.
And when they do set, you want it to make fruit. And you don't know if it's been cool enough
Right.
during that critical period when it's setting fruit. What I'll do sometimes is, you'll have the blossom open and then maybe the next day it'll sort of close back up. And by the day after that, the flower is still hanging, but you can gently feel the base of that flower. And if you feel it and it feels totally flat, it probably didn't set fruit. But a lot of times you'll feel like it almost feels like a little bead in there. And that's that little baby fruit that's starting. So I'll do that as a way of checking, am I getting fruit set or not? But there's really not a whole lot you can do about the hot temperatures. I think I just heard about the idea of shading them. And, if we get up to 95, I think I'm going to try it. If we get up 93, 95, I might pull out some shade cloth and not shade cloth, floating row cover. Right. And the other thing, you want to be careful not to restrict airflow.
Right.
So you just want to just drape it lightly over the top of the plant. And they said what they do is they sort of have it clipped over the top so that they can pull it back on the days that aren't that hot. So you're not getting in the way of the sun getting through.
Right.
When it's cooler.
And we still have another couple of weeks before the heat of summer.
Right. Yeah, the heat of summer lags behind the longest day of the year.
The July 15th to August 15th.
Yeah. It also is a great time for fried green tomatoes because they are wonderful. I like to just dip it in oil. Well, I would do buttermilk if I kept buttermilk in the house, but I keep yogurt in the house. So I'll mix a little yogurt with milk, dip slices of tomato in there, and I do a mixture of half panko breadcrumbs and Parmesan cheese. And then I just fry them. Butter's really good, but you can use just a little olive oil or something like that to fry them in. And they're quite lovely. I picked a cup. There actually had been 2 more in this cluster. I picked them.
Everything's better with cream gravy on it.
I'll tell you what.
No.
I'll tell you what. You can also, because I make a fair amount of canned salsa.
Yeah.
I make tomatillo, I make red tomato, but I also make green tomato salsa. And I can it. You just need to make sure you're following a recipe so you get the acidity right, etc. But I roast my green tomato, either at the beginning of the season or at the end of the season. I don't have enough reds or whatever, or I'm, really impatient. And
Yeah.
I just roast them in the oven with the garlic and the peppers and the onions, and then I blend them in the blender,
Oh,
and then
sounds
I
good.
hot water can. So gang, there's lots you can do with green tomatoes if they don't seem to be ripening at the moment.
And I also have found different tomato varieties. The green tomatoes are very different.
Mm-hmm.
Like this one is actually early grow, and they have a really tart. They're really tart and tangy when they're green. Now, another variety that I tried that some people like, for ripe tomatoes, Mr. Stripey.
I've done Mr. Stripey.
Yeah, but the green tomatoes on it tasted like nothing. And so they weren't very yummy as fried green tomatoes.
I thought green tomatoes were poisonous.
No.
I have never had a problem with green.
Tasty. I don't know that I'd eat them raw, but you could in a salsa. But just don't eat the leaves.
Not really raw. They're when I make the green tomato salsa, I roast in the oven, so they're not really raw.
Oh, okay. Let's see. What's the next picture? Oh, this is insurance. This is my insurance.
I have some insurance too.
I have Blue Cross and Blue Shield.
Oh, I have that too, but this is my squash insurance. And it's actually planted in, these are zucchini plants. And I certainly expected to have squash vine borers by now, but I haven't seen any.
Me neither.
So I am happy. So these are actually still under lights. I need to get them hardened off outside. And all those flowers are male flowers. It hasn't put off a single female flower yet. But so that's my squash insurance, just in case I have squash vine borers. And what they're planted in is milk cartons. And I actually cut them in half, and the bottom is open. And so you can set them in a container and fill it up with soil. And so I hope you guys are seeing this. I'll show it again later. So that's my insurance against squash vine borers, and I can have them hardened off and ready to go outside within a week or so. But I probably should get them out there because you can see all those roots. It's got a lot of roots so far. And this is a failed experiment over on that side. Okay, so those aren't raspberries, those are blackberries, and they're doing pretty good. These are the Himalayan blackberries, and they're trying to take over half my planting beds. And I really would like to get them out, but while they're there, I'm going to take advantage of them. This is actually one of my worst weeds. I wouldn't say worst weeds, but one of the ones I dislike the most. This is called field bindweed.
Oh, yes.
And it's a morning glory relative, but normal morning glory are pretty little heart-shaped leaves. This one has sort of a spade-shaped leaf or a spear-shaped leaf and white flowers. And the big problem with it is it has perennial roots. That means the roots survive the winter. And so it can take over vast territories.
And also, the seeds have a very high germination rate. They're very viable.
Yes. And so it pops up everywhere.
Yeah.
I have 2 other morning glories that I actually will let go. I have some Grandpa Otts, and then I have a real pretty sort of bright blue daylily. And if I see those coming up, I'll let them go. But this one I try to get out of there. It's just I have too much yard to keep up with. This is another one that you're seeing on the roadsides blooming right now. It's chicory. It was brought over here by European.
Yep.
And if you've heard of adding chicory to coffee, yes, this is the same thing, except I think they harvest the chicory for coffee in the fall. So that's not something you would be harvesting now. Let's see, we'll get to that one later. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can do some discussion here. So what was I going to show? Okay, I was going to show something. I said I was going to show. Oh, I know what I was going to show. Okay, it's in here. I was going to show my painted serpent. So that's the painted serpent, and it's called an Armenian cucumber. It's got a fuzz on it. Can you see that? So that's really nice.
Oh yeah, you can kind of see it.
You know, as opposed to just a regular cucumber.
Right.
You know, which is sort of a smooth skin with bumps.
And
so this is the one variety, and then this is my other variety. So they're really quite nice. And so I've enjoyed them. And this is one of my zucchini varieties. I think it's called Magda, something like that. And so that's some of my morning's harvest. I wanted to get those painted serpent before they got any bigger. But they taste just like cucumbers, even though they are fuzzy. So let's see what's going on with the group. Now, someone asked about bulbs. Should I have bulbs that I didn't get planted, and should I plant them now? It really does depend on what kind of bulbs they are. If they're pretty much any kind of bulb, it's not going to survive an extra year in the dry. You know, so if it was supposed to be planted in the fall, you need to at least pot it up or something to get some gentle moisture to it, because it's not going to survive essentially 2 years out of the ground. It's pretty likely that it would die before the end of those 2 years. So I would pot it up and keep it just barely moist, because the odds are not good of it doing well, even though sometimes they will make it. But it's not the greatest bet. My hair's a little crazy today. Another issue, let's see, what else have we seen? I'm trying to think what's been going on recently.
Okay, when you were talking about the bulbs right there, you were talking about fall blooming.
Well, someone asked, they didn't specify what their bulbs are. So I don't know.
I remember who that was, and I think they were referring to spring flowering bulbs.
Okay, so spring flowering would be fall planted. Right.
Yes.
So they need to get in, they need to either be potted up, because they just won't survive another year.
Yeah.
I would just go ahead and plant them. You probably don't have anything to lose by planting them. And I don't think, okay, most of the fall planted spring blooming bulbs are from areas that have very dry winters. I mean, very dry summers. And so they're essentially dormant in the summer. So my thought on it is that you could, that if you planted them now, they would be able to get some moisture from the soil to keep from totally drying out. And you would have a chance at them doing something this coming spring. If you leave them unplanted, they're going to totally dry up and you'll have nothing. So I would just get them in the ground, and I don't even know if they would put on leaf right now if they were planted. If they did put on leaf, you know, there's definitely a chance that you're not going to have flowers in the spring if they're spring blooming.
Right.
But it's really hard to know. I haven't had very much luck with leaving bulbs sitting extra times. If I realize I haven't planted them, I get them planted as soon as I can. Oh, I'm looking, someone, powdery mildew on bee balm. That is very, very common. There's not a whole lot you can do to get rid of it.
Aren't there some cultivars that do better?
Yes, there are definitely some varieties, cultivars of
Bee balm.
bee balm that do
Okay,
very well.
Now, are they cultivars or could we call those nativars?
Well, nativars is a term that's been used for cultivars of native plants.
Right.
So most people just like calling them cultivars.
Okay.
So what it is they've selected out specific specific plants that have characteristics that are good. So that I know there's one real red bee balm that's very resistant to powdery mildew, but that doesn't help you with what you already have planted.
Right.
And so that's a gnarlier situation. And I was going to see, what is it? Does someone have, what is it? The plant pest soil?
Yeah.
Did they have something?
Amy, I have that up. They had a
Plant pest center. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to share your screen so that?
Sure.
We can sort of show that, and we can post that into the notes under this.
Okay, let's see here.
Because powdery mildew,
you have to enable.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forget that it doesn't automatically do that.
Yeah, for some reason.
Yeah, and I can't figure out where to set it to do that. Okay, you should be able to do that now.
Okay, so I'm going to show. So this is just the Facebook page for the Soil Plant Pest Center. This is at UT Extension. Right. So I scrolled down from the top of the page there, right down to here, and they're talking about crepe myrtles, but it's the same concept. So it says powdery mildew can be seen on many plants. The crepe myrtle will not bloom as well as flower buds will be infected too. Abundant rainfall isn't needed for infection, just high humidity. Short-term solution, fungicide sprays. Long-term solution, choose a resistant cultivar when shopping for crepe myrtles. So similar to what Brian was saying.
Yeah. Can I say something about this? In particular with crepe myrtles, they cannot stand shade, even their own shade. And of course, shade contributes to the powdery mildew. The way people top their trees to get the effect, like in the lower right-hand corner right there, you have an explosion of canes coming off of those top branches right there, and they are contributing to your problem. If the crepe myrtles, like many other trees, are properly pruned for their health, you don't have this problem.
That's good to know. Yeah, I wish it were an issue that we could tell you, do step 1, 2, and 3, and you won't have powdery mildew issues, but it just doesn't work that way.
I would say, and I just wishful thinking right now, once we start doing farmers markets again, we can be out in the public where we can sit down with people and talk to them personally about their particular problem with crepe myrtles or anything else that has to do with powdery mildew. I miss that terribly.
Right.
We can tell, Brian. All right. So
someone else asked to prune my mint back. Yes, prune mint heavily, prune mint a lot, and you will get new, fresh, really tasty growth. I'll prune my mint and I'll hang the sprigs up to dry and use that for tea in the winter.
Amy, what other herbs should you prune? What about, for example, rosemary or catmint?
Rosemary, you probably want to do like a yearly pruning
in
the early fall. I mean, early spring, not early fall. Those woody herbs that are called, some people call them sub shrubs. Now, rosemary can be a real shrub.
Yes, it can.
But the advice on those is to prune those in the spring when they start showing new growth. But the annual herbs, particularly basil, when it starts showing flower heads,
right,
the beginnings of flowers, and I meant to take a picture, I'll bring one next week, of the beginnings of a basil flower head. You want to pinch that flower head off with probably at least the set of leaves right under it. Yes, Brian.
at least you just answered you answered what
Oh,
I
okay.
wanted to say right there. You don't want to take off just the flower head. You really want to go to the second set of leaves below that flower head right there. And if pinching off the flower, within 3 days, you're going to have another flower. If you pinch off to the second set of leaves below that right there, you have a couple of weeks before the thing tries to flower again.
Yeah, and with my basil, I'll oftentimes cut a sprig like that long so it's easier to hang and dry.
Yeah.
And so I'll take the plant down by a third or a half so it can regrow. And then it gives me some nice harvests of basil. On the annual herbs, if you let them go to flower, the flavor changes. It's not as nice. The perennial herbs, that's not so much an issue. They just have a real different life cycle. Parsley, I'll take leaves off from the outside of the plant because it forms a crown where the new leaves come up from the center. And it's what's called a biennial, and it won't go to seed until it's been through a winter. Now, if you planted your parsley really early, it can think it's gone through a winter and just go immediately, what seems like immediately, to seed. But if yours hasn't gone to seed by now, you'll have great parsley for a while. It doesn't grow very fast in the heat of summer, and the spice bush swallowtails will be very active soon, and they really love the parsley, and parsley, fennel, dill, that whole family, they really love it. So I usually end up with a couple different patches of parsley, and if they're getting on the one that I want to eat, I'll move them to the one that's set aside for the caterpillars.
I've been tossing in my cilantro, because it once it gets hot, it's just like woof,
Right.
Yeah.
But
it bolts.
It bolts like crazy. And even if I keep it in the shade, it still does. But we get a good harvest in the springtime, and then I just drop some seeds in, and I've got some little short plants going now. So you just keep it going, and so I've got about a 2-inch, and they're in the shade, and I keep them out, keep them kind of the cooler part.
I think I don't have enough growing place that's really shady. I can never get that second run of cilantro to germinate this time of year.
Well, I have it in a pot so I can move it around too.
Yeah. But a lot of people have, good luck with getting it to go through the summer by planting, every several weeks.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So there was one other thing we were going to talk about, and I'm going to find my picture of it that I had. Because we said we were going to talk about what can you plant now.
Yes.
What am I doing?
Which I'm scrambling around right now. This weekend, I was hoping to do it earlier this week, but this weekend I was thinking about getting my fall and winter garden going.
Right. So looking at your soil your seed packages is really important. Some plants, these are both cucumbers. They're different varieties. And as you can see, this one, we're at slightly under 100 days, frost-free days that we can expect. So this one, it says 72 days. Now for cucumber, that's going to be from planting the seed. Now some other plants, when you see that number of days on the seed packet, it actually means from when you put the transplants in. So for tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, you actually have to add 6 weeks to this time. So you wouldn't want to start tomatoes or cucumbers or peppers, the ones that we typically plant from transplants right now. And Brian, can you put that in the comments under under this video? That reference about what you can plant now for fall.
The reference is SP 291-0. 291-0.
I'm finding it. I'll put the link in the chat.
Yeah, if you could put the link in the with the photo. So it's really important. So one of the things you want to figure out is it a plant that's something you would put a transplant in, or would it be something that you'd plant a seed? If it's something with a transplant, there are some tomatoes that are 55 days, but that's from an established transplant. Though you can actually cheat that a little bit. If you take a sucker from a tomato plant that's growing and root it, and they'll root very quickly within a week or so in water, and you can plant those, that plant thinks it's as old as the plant you took the sucker off of. So it'll try to start producing fruit immediately. Though you might want to pull off the first cluster or two and let it grow.
Would you use a rooting hormone with that, or just straight water?
Just straight water. Tomatoes don't need a rooting hormone. They will root very easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, just pull off that little sucker that's, you've got your branch comes off. This is your main stem. This is your branch, and your sucker is right in here. And you can just bend that off. And if you put it in water, that tissue right at the bottom of that sucker that you pull off is ready to make roots. So it'll do that. Tomatoes are very good about that. So days to maturity is really important. Some of the summer squashes are in the 50 days to maturity range. So you want to probably have something under 70 days to maturity, just to ensure you'll get some harvest time on your vegetables. A lot of the bush beans are within that range. And then the other thing that you can start now is...
Can I interrupt just a quick, because I'm having a hard time finding this publication. Brian, what's the number of the publication again?
That was S as in Sam, P as in Paul, 291-0.
Okay.
That's a letter O.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Oh, let's see if there's any comment. Are there any questions in the group so far?
Miss Amy.
Yes.
Okay, you know that I'm not the veggie person right here, so I have a lot of questions. I do know a little bit about this, and I have grown a few veggies and stuff, but I'm not really into it. So I like taking advantage of my lack of knowledge to ask you questions about stuff like this right here. Hopefully this is for the sake of our listeners.
Yes. Okay.
So we were also, just FYI, just put a pin in it. We were going to talk about lawn care right now.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Brian, go ahead and tell people what they need to know as far as lawn care right now.
Okay. Even though we've had almost record-breaking water this year, we still have our dry spells and stuff. In the event of the lack of rain, we need to water our lawns. And I highly recommend not doing it every day with a little bit of water on the surface right here, but deep, infrequent watering. You'd say maybe 2 times a week, the deep watering. That is important right there. Saving your clippings, using a mulching mower if you can, and return the clippings back into the lawn right there to help build up the organic content of the soil. That's very important. One other thing right there is the proper mowing height. If you have a warm season grass, depending on what variety you have, if it's Bermuda, it should be about 1 1/4, 1.5 inches height right there. If you got zoysia, that's about 2.5 inches height. This height is very important for root growth and for the grass blades themselves, because the grass blades themselves help shade out the sun from beating down on your on the soil and the root system. So these things are very important. Most of us have a cool season grass like fescues. These should be between 3 and 4 inches, and it's for the same purpose right here, for root growth and for shading out your root system. If we have, goodness sakes, weeks of never-ending rain where everything is saturated, the humidity is high, right there. If you can get out there and cut your grass, any of those grasses a little bit shorter right there, so that grass blades can breathe, that is very beneficial, and that will help avoid fungal problems. But right now, I'm not seeing that kind of a problem. So I want to be a stickler with the max height of the grass blade. And I would not fertilize. Please, goodness sakes, this time of year when we want high heat like this right here, do not feed your grass thinking that's going to help it. You can actually very likely add to your problem. Height, watering, these things are very important. Now you can have, if you're dying to do something up there, an organic, slow release nitrogen fertilizer. But I would do it very, very thinly and water the day before you apply this. Apply the whatever you're going to do, and then turn around and water it in again. The watering the day before is extremely important for the grass roots to take up those nutrients. You can burn your grass, and really a lot of your plants the same thing.
Yep.
Excellent. Mary Bartolini says, isn't it weird that I find talking about grass interesting? I think Brian can relate.
I promise. I promise I don't smoke it. I promise.
Well, you know, we all geek out on gardening, y'all. We all have our special areas that we like, but I think that's really, really wise words, Brian, to share right now, because people have an urge to like fix things. I think that one of the themes for today that I've heard a couple times now with the powdery mildew and the grass, and that some things we have to accept. Right. About our climate, about our soil, not so much our soil conditions, because we can make changes in that. We can change how we water. But there's also a point where you got to think about how much you want to spend on watering, Right. For lawn watering, Brian, when's the best time to lawn water? What are the experts saying?
We talked about this, I think, last week or the week before, right there. For some time now, the recommendation has been watering early in the morning. Okay. So that grass blades, the leaves of the plants, whatever else, have plenty of time to dry out before evening. But now research is saying that watering early in the morning, when a lot of your grass blades or your other plants have morning dew still on on the plants themselves, on the grass blades, you're adding to the problem this potential fungal disease pressures. Okay, so now they're saying the best times to do watering is, from our good friend Dr. Pepper, 10, 2, and 4.
Okay,
are the best times to do that right there. 4 in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon are good ones. I'm not really that crazy, especially on days I hear where we're hovering in the low 90s. I personally, this is me alone, I don't like watering at the heat of the day, especially when the sun is beating down on there. I have no research to back that up. I just don't like it. So
I just don't like it because I don't like to be out in the heat.
Well, that too. But to pass on what the research is saying, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 4 o'clock are the best times to do that right there.
Fascinating.
Some of us have jobs and we don't have the luxury of coming home at 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock to water our lawns or whatever else right there. If you cannot do so otherwise, water at least 2 hours before sunset on your plants, whether it's the grass, shrubs, anything else. But you need that time to help getting the sunshine on there to dry out those leaves before the sun does set.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Good call.
Yes. Oh, I looked at that reference that we posted, and it's actually spring planted cool season vegetables.
But they can be.
Right, but it doesn't list the dates and stuff for fall, for summer planting. And I can't find,
well,
there used to be a reference for.
One thing I have heard is using this same list right here that we're talking about, spring planting guide right there. Okay, look at the days from seed to harvest. Okay,
yes.
Look at our first frost date, or maybe a week or so after our first frost date. Count back.
Right.
Count back to that and say, okay, you need to put this, start this either seed or the transplants by this time.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Amy, that there's that, but I'm also.
Well, there used to be one, and I can't find it. It's like it disappeared.
I've also planted. I've just let me. I'm gonna post the Tennessee.
The 2020 year-long calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would suggest that right there.
Okay. Let's see if this one works, because this is Fall Vegetable Gardens. I found a link to the Fall Vegetable Gardens one.
Is it for UT?
It is UT Extension, and I couldn't find it listed in the normal places. So let me put the link in the group.
So
it lists the planting dates and even recommended varieties. All the planting dates are in July through September. So it tells you, when to think about planting things. Like for turnip roots, it suggests waiting till August 1st.
Okay, awesome.
Because they like to be in the ground when things are cooling off. Spinach, it says September 10th.
Wow, good to know.
Yeah. So let me get that posted into the groups so that everyone can find that.
I also posted the Tennessee Home Vegetable Growing Calendar, and for folks who are thinking ahead about what infrastructure they need to have an extended season, I also posted a UT Extension pub about extending your growing season. So if you want to start to think about what am I going to have in place to keep things from,
frost
damage and keep, so that'll help too if you're thinking about that.
Dr.
I'm going to try it this year.
Dr. Natalie did that article. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in our climate, there's a lot of things, a lot of cool season vegetables that you can carry through the winter with very little protection.
Yes.
And so it'll give you a harvest through the winter, and which is really nice. And particularly things like lettuce and spinach are really easy to grow in the winter, where they're a challenge in the summer.
Yeah. Something I would want to say something along the lines of what y'all are talking about right now. When people are thinking ahead, planning on what they want to do for this fall, let's say, and stuff. Okay, look at our harvest dates, the number of days germination, so on and so forth right here. But you also want to find out, okay, what are the cold tolerances? Okay, if we are still going into late fall, winter, early winter, and we're still harvesting, and the weather forecast comes down, say we got it, polar vortexes blowing in. Okay, what can your plants do? How can they survive? If you know what your plants can tolerate right there, then you know what you have, what things you have to do to get ready.
Yeah. So before we wrap up today, because we're getting pretty close to that hour mark, which seems to be what we're doing.
Sorry, gang, we're rolling.
I'm not done yet.
Oh, you're not done yet. Okay. I was gonna see if anyone out there had any questions for us or anything you'd like us to cover in the next Gardening Tips Live. We had planned on doing seed starting this week. I think we're pushing that off till next week. And so we'll cover that one next week. And I'll post pictures of my basil flowers so that you all can see, well, basil pre-flower. So you can see that. But if anyone has any suggestions for what we should talk about next week, we would definitely like to hear that. And it's great seeing all you guys' harvests that you're getting and how your plants are growing and your flowers are blooming.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I would want to say something about our flowers blooming and stuff. Of course, I posted a couple of days ago that I lost one of my rose bushes to rose rosette disease. And I've had a couple of people coming in saying, okay, how did you determine this right here? What made you decide what to do? Mm-hmm. That is some very heavy topics to cover in this program right here, Garden Talk Live. Send me a PM or put that on our Facebook group for discussion right here as an open topic. Let's discuss that here, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Yeah. Oh, I was looking at the photos. Someone posted a picture of some sort of a stink bug on a cucumber. Let me see if I can do a really quick search. And you've got a little bit of powdery mildew going, or downy mildew going on there, but that's really common on cucumbers right now. Let's see if I can figure out what kind of stink bug. It doesn't look like a brown marmiated, so I'm not sure.
Now, downy mildew on cucumbers right there, what could we do to prevent that?
You can open up don't top water, and do some opening up of take out some of the big leaves.
Right.
So that you can have more air going through. And let me see, I'm finding a reference that shows the different kind of stink bug nymphs. Because I'm pretty positive that one's not a brown marmiated. Let's see. Which one is that? Because there are actually some beneficial stink bugs. Mm. And so sometimes it's hard to tell the difference.
Megan, while you're looking for that right there, I hope people picked up on when we've talked about disease pressures on plants, shrubs, trees, vegetable leaves and stuff like that right there. Mm-hmm. Airflow is extremely important.
Yes.
If you want to stay on something, and a lot of people shy away from chemicals, and this is one way. You cannot guarantee not having a disease pressure of some kind right there, but you can reduce the chances of it by keeping plenty of good airflow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can definitely tell you it's not doesn't look like a brown marmiated stink bug nymph, but I can't really tell you what it is. Sometimes it's hard to tell on those. And one of the issues is we do have at least 2 different kinds of beneficial stink bugs that actually eat other bugs in our area. And so you don't want to hurt those beneficial stink bugs. And then there's also some that really don't do much damage to plants. So I really like to get an identification before I do anything.
So
Yeah.
those insects would be either B9 or B8.
I think I missed something.
B9, they're not harmful.
Okay.
If
Yeah, benign is right.
B9 or they're B8.
Okay.
I'm gonna give myself a high five.
Okay, you can. I'm not so sure. I can't really tell if they're beneficial or problem stink bugs. You know, even when I zoom in and I can't find a matching photo right now to them. I'll look more through the week and get back to you on that one. Pretty sure it's not brown marmiated, but it is some sort of stink bug. And there are beneficial ones and there are pest ones. But if you're just seeing a couple here and there, I would just leave it alone.
I mean, the other thing you could do, Amy, is just check
Yeah.
and see if your plant is getting any damage.
Right.
You know?
Check and see if you're noticing damage.
And if there's no damage,
damage,
like let her go.
Damage is sometimes hard.
Is there a rough estimate, like say 40% damage to a leaf right there? That's cause for alarm, or maybe 25.
It's more damage to the whole plant that you're looking at. So I think it's like 30-40% damage to the whole plant, and then you want to look at treating things
With chemicals, you mean?
with chemicals, whether they're organic or synthetic chemicals, because organic remedies are also chemicals.
Right.
Yeah, I
They're
think
just not man-made.
it's also helpful to think about bugs as food for other bugs. So there's like a complex network going on in your garden of bugs eating bugs, and bugs are necessary for other bugs. And so, you know, it's always just good to keep an eye. You know, earlier this year, I got pretty bent out of shape because I had a lot of aphids on my tomato plant. And I ended up putting some soap spray out there. And after the fact, gang, I really regretted I did it because I thought, you know, wait a minute, we got ladybugs all around that need to eat these aphids, and they're not really doing any damage to the plant. I just didn't like them, you know?
Right.
So, and they will go away after a while, you know, or you can shake them off or like spray them off. So, you know, I think it's always good to like investigate what it is, see what's going on in your plant, investigate what you think the bug might be, but also like let things do their thing so that, you know, the ecosystem of the bugs and, you know, bugs eating bugs. So
yeah,
that's my perspective on it.
Yeah. Oh, and Carol Corey got back about what the bulbs were. Okay, mixed Dutch iris, red storm border lilies, and peony Carl Rosenberg. I would definitely plant all those. You know, and if you can't plant them in the ground, I would definitely pot them up.
With a large enough pot right there to hold moisture.
Yeah, and it's possible that it's too late for some of them. Really concerned about the peony, you know, whether it would still be alive or not. The others are a little bit hardier, I think. I don't know a lot about, I'm not familiar with red storm border lilies, you know, as far as what kind of lily they are. But I would definitely get all those planted. What is it? At this point, you have nothing to lose by getting them planted.
Yeah.
And you have potential gain. Yeah, because I don't think there's any way to store them that would be helpful. Well, it's after 10. We've given folks time to ask some more questions if they want to. So I think it's time for us to say goodbye for today. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye today.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next Saturday.
Yep. Bye.